The tagline, greatest wrestling match ever, is so subjective for many people. For some people, they think the greatest match ever is a 30-minute classic with deep storytelling and layered in factors that make it the greatest match ever. For some people, they're into those sub 30-minute, fast paced type of matches where you see athleticism off the charts, and it's a match that will have you go, this is awesome. And for some people, it's matches that they're so low key in the storytelling and everything that's going on, and you don't even recognize how low key the storytelling is. You don't even recognize it, and you just let the match speak for itself. You just let the match do all the talking, if nothing else. And this is what we got on April 9th, 2017. Live from Ryogoku Sumo Hall, we got that match with storytelling so low key that you wouldn't even recognize majority of the storytelling that was in those matches. You recognize later on that matches like this are special once in a generation matches, where it just makes you think this is the greatest match of all time. And here I'm going to be making the case as to why on that fateful day, April 9th, 2017, we saw the greatest wrestling match of all time. Kazuchika Okada versus Katsuyori Shibata for the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship. Now this match actually, the story of it does not begin in 2017. So look at when it was set in stone for this match. We have to go all the way back to 2014, when Kazuchika Okada would defend the IWGP Heavyweight Championship against Katsuyori Shibata's friend Hiroki Goto. And after the match, Shibata would go up to Okada and proclaim that next challenger is Katsuyori Shibata. Kazuchika Okada would decline him and say the only way Okada would accept the challenge is if Katsuyori Shibata were to win New Japan Cup. And for the next few years, this is pretty much forgotten because in 2014, Shibata could not win the cup. In 2015, Shibata could not win the cup. In 2016, Katsuyori Shibata was not eligible to enter the New Japan Cup because never openweight champion, IWGP Intercontinental Champion, and IWGP Heavyweight Champion cannot enter New Japan Cup. Because the winner chooses from those three champions who he wants to challenge. Shibata was never openweight champion at the time of New Japan Cup 2016, so we could not enter. At New Japan Cup 2016's finals, after Tetsuya Naito won, Kazuchika Okada would have led Katsuyori Shibata's longtime friend Hiroki Goto into Kazuchika Okada's faction, Chaos. And then at Wrestle Kingdom 11, 2017, January 4th, Katsuyori Shibata loses the never openweight championship to who? Hiroki Goto. And now, that gives Shibata all he gets the green light to enter the New Japan Cup. In the first round, he gets through Minoru Suzuki. In the quarterfinals, he gets through Juice Robinson. In the semifinals, he gets through member of Chaos and a long-time famed rival of his, Tomohiro Ishii. In the finals, he gets through Bad Luck Fale. And after the finals, when he does his post-match interview to close the show out, he immediately proclaims who he will challenge. 3 words. I want Okada. And he even brings up how in 2014 Okada said the only way Shibata could challenge is by winning the New Japan Cup. Shibata's now won the New Japan Cup. Now he finally can challenge Kazuchika Okada. And the site is set. April 9th, Ryogoku Sumo Hall. In the main event of Sakura Genesis. Katsuyori Shibata gets only his second challenge at the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship. And he finally gets to face the man he challenged 3 years earlier. Finally gets to face Kazuchika Okada. Now, before the match even begins, let me just say, the entire beginning of the match, it's quite possibly one of my favorite pre-match segments of all time. You see the basic New Japan video package where it'll have an interview with the wrestlers, and that's fine. Then you go immediately after that, and the crowd, they're all hyped up, and it immediately goes into the Parade of Champions. Now, for those who do not know, before New Japan IWGP title matches, or before heavyweight title matches, before it was retired, Intercontinental title matches, sometimes before never openweight title matches, and before IWGP Junior Heavyweight title matches, there was something called the Parade of Champions, where it goes through the history of every person to have held the belt. And it's quite possibly a great thing that they do. But then, after that, as the crowd's slowly quieting down, a soft piano hits and Shibata enters out, and it's probably one of my favorite crossovers from the Parade of Champions to a entrance. The way that you hear the big tubas blasting, and then as soon as that quiets down and you hear the crowds clap, you immediately go into Shibata's theme. And the entrances are amazing. It is night and day. Katsuyori Shibata coming out ready. He only wants one thing: to win the match. And Kazuchika Okada comes out, and he's taunting to the crowd. He has on the glamorous jacket, the glamorous attire with the championship, while Katsuyori Shibata has on the same thing you see every time. The standard black trunks, black kick pads, the white wrist tape, and the wrestler towel over his neck. And when Okada enters the ring, it has one of my favorite shots, where Okada climbs the top rope and does his iconic Rainmaker pose. As Katsuyori Shibata, he's just standing in the corner, not even paying any attention to it. And then, before the match begins as well, when the ring announcer is introducing the men in the ring, Okada does the Rainmaker pose as the fans all adore the glitz and glamour of Okada. And Shibata, he just bows down to the ring mat and to his predecessors that came before him. Now, for the match, this is a brilliant match from beginning to end. The first about 5 to 10 minutes of the match, it's just grappling. It is just grappling. Them going on the mat, them grappling, standing against each other. It is just grappling. And this is done for a specific reason that I love. Throughout every single one of Kazuchika Okada's title matches, he not faced any challenge throughout the first few minutes of the match. That usually comes later on in the match. But here, he's facing a challenge in like the first 5 minutes of the match, because he's trying to beat Shibata at Shibata's game. And that immediately lays out the match. Kazuchika Okada may be a great competitor. However, he is not the best wrestler in the ring when facing Katsuyori Shibata. And that's seen as Okada, he's frantically trying to find any way to get out of all the grappling that Shibata's doing. And when Okada finally gets on top and has Shibata in his own hold, Shibata's calm, he has everything under control, and he just easily gets out. He easily gets out of whatever Okada has him in and gets the ball back in his court. And that is one thing that I really like about the first few minutes of this match. Every time Okada thinks he has Shibata beat, Shibata just says, "Oh no, you don't have me beat," and brings the ball back into his court. And that's amazing from the first few minutes of this match. We see Kazuchika Okada have to face adversity for the first real time. And then, as the match goes on even more, Okada slowly begins to bring the ball back into his court with his style of match, the longer matches. However, Shibata can wrestle those as well. Okada brings Shibata outside the ring and begins to beat him up outside the ring. But then Shibata, later on, after he hits his patented corner dropkick, which is one of the most beautiful moves I've ever seen, Shibata then throws Okada into the barricade and hits his own dropkick. And that's really what makes this match so good. Anytime Okada thinks for a split second that he has Kazuchika Okada has finally gotten the upper hand on Katsuyori Shibata, Shibata says no and shows him exactly why. And that is great from this match. And then later on in the match, we see how Okada, yet again, he has not faced adversity like this. He hasn't. That is easily shown. And Okada, he gets strikes on top of strikes on top of strikes delivered to his body. And some strikes might make you wince in pain, but these make it feel like you just got hit with how they boom through the Goku Sumo Hall. They make it feel like you just got hit. And this match, it's such a great match, and I'm not gonna go through every little detail, otherwise this video would be like 2 hours long. But closer to the end of the match, when Okada finally hits the dropkick, which is the most beautiful dropkick in wrestling. No one beats the Okada dropkick. After we finally make it to that point and Okada has him up for the Rainmaker, Shibata, usually when you see people reverse it, they'll reverse it until like Tanahashi usually does a sling blade. Kenny Omega does a V-trigger. Things like that. Tetsuya Naito, he has reversed it with his own Destino. Katsuyori Shibata here, he just begins to kick Okada right in the face, in the arm, and he's using those strikes to his advantage. And Okada responds by hitting one of the most devastating Rainmakers I've ever seen. It's not even like he just did nothing with it. He put everything he could have in that Rainmaker. It's one of the hardest Rainmakers I've ever seen. And Shibata just tanks it. He tanks in that Rainmaker. And then, you all know what comes up next. Shibata takes Okada, drags him up, and headbutts Okada so hard to the point it splits Shibata's head open. And I'm gonna get into that after I finish with the actual match. But after that, the crowd was at an all-time high. And they just wanted to see what would happen next. And Shibata, later on in the match when Okada has him for another Rainmaker, Shibata tries to tank his way through it after eating a second Rainmaker. Then he just collapses. Okada finally gets him back up. It's that third Rainmaker. And finally, after 38 minutes of greatness, Kazuchika Okada wins the match. What more? There's nothing I can really say to put into words how amazing this match was. I'm not gonna get into the post-match stuff with Bad Luck Fale because that sucked. But there's nothing I can put into words of how great this match was. It is an all-time classic. One of the least looked upon stories in a New Japan main event of all time. And all in all, if there's ever one match I want people to watch from wrestling, it is this match here. 5 stars across the board. Now, after the match, Katsuyori Shibata backstage, he collapsed after the match, and they had to rush him to the hospital, where it was found out that Katsuyori Shibata headbutt actually ended up hurting him way worse than anyone ever thought it would have hurt him. He got a subdural hematoma, and that required emergency surgery. And that's what his headbutt did to him, especially after the repeated use of it after he had been doing it for nearly a year. On April 13th of 2017, in the Wrestling Observer, Dave Meltzer reported it's believed Katsuyori Shibata would never be cleared to wrestle again. But then it was later said that he was probably never going to wrestle again. Dave Meltzer also would say that during it, that they had to legitimately remove his brain out of his body and put it back in. In 2017, later on that year, he made a surprise appearance during the G1 Climax Finals in the same venue where he had his match with Kazuchika Okada in Ryogoku Sumo Hall. And all he had to say was, "I am alive." That is all. During Katsuyori Shibata's road to try and even get back to the ring to have one match, they announced that in 2018, March of 2018, he would be the head coach for the New Japan Pro Wrestling Los Angeles Dojo. where he would train wrestlers. That way he could still have a role in the company. And Shibata's done work with New Japan and in-ring angles every here and then. He's done angles with it. In 2018, August 2018, he was in the ring with Hiroshi Tanahashi, and after Tanahashi beat Kota Ibushi, Katsuyori Shibata would hoist Tanahashi on his shoulders and ride around the ring with him up there in a triumphant way, reuniting 2/3 of the Three Musketeers. In June of 2019, Katsuyori Shibata made another surprise appearance, this time at Dominion in Osaka-jo Hall, where then he would introduce Kenta in his first appearance after leaving the WWE. Kenta then later on turned on Katsuyori Shibata. And then Katsuyori Shibata got in the ring and actually did something. He actually was able to compete with Kenta. First time he had ever been able to do anything physically after what happened in Ryogoku. 2021, during a match between Hiroshi Tanahashi and Kenta, where Katsuyori Shibata was on commentary, Kenta would taunt Shibata over and over again. And when the ref was down and Kenta was trying to cheat and use a briefcase, Shibata entered the ring and would kick Tanahashi. Well, he would kick Kenta and kick the briefcase out of his hand. And then, on the final night of G1 Climax 31, and something nobody saw happening at all, Zack Sabre Jr. would enter out to the ring, and everyone thought he was going to say that he wants to face Shingo Takagi for the world title at Power Struggle 2021. But then Katsuyori Shibata entered out, and they had a 5-minute UWF rules exhibition match, which would end in a draw. Afterwards, Shibata would state he feels good, and the next time he steps in the wrestling ring, it's in a proper wrestling match. On December 15th, Katsuyori Shibata said that at Tokyo Dome, he will have a match. And since then, Shibata's had a match, and from there, who knows what will really happen with Katsuyori Shibata. Now, Kazuchika Okada's road after this match has went way differently than Shibata's road. After this match, Kazuchika Okada would continue on his record-setting IWGP Heavyweight Championship reign that would go on to last in total 720 days and have a combined 12 defenses of the IWGP Heavyweight Championship. The reign would end on June 9th, 2018. He lost a 2 out of 3 falls, no time limit match to Kenny Omega, thus ending his 4th championship reign. After this, Okada went into a phase that has been labeled as the Balloon Maker phase, when he would enter out with balloons, and he called this the Summer of Fun. This was around the time G1 Climax was beginning, and in that tournament, he had a record of 6-2-1. His 2 losses coming against Switchblade Jay White and Bad Luck Fale. On the final night, he went to a draw against Hiroshi Tanahashi, and that pushed Tanahashi to the finals. At Destruction 2018, Hiroshi Tanahashi would face Kazuchika Okada for the rights to challenge the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion at Tokyo Dome, which Tanahashi would win. This would also be the first time Kazuchika Okada would not be involved in the main event of Tokyo Dome in his career. After this, Okada would be seen more than likely in the IWGP Heavyweight Championship picture. Won it from Jay White in 2019, losing it to Tetsuya Naito at January 5th, 2020 Tokyo Dome, Wrestle Kingdom 14 Night 2. And then after that, Okada pretty much went 2 years without really challenging the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship, not even winning it. G1 Climax 30, he would begin a feud with Will Ospreay that would last until Wrestle Kingdom 16, when Will Ospreay would turn on Kazuchika Okada and make his own faction. In 2021, it was pretty much a down year for Okada, as he wasn't really doing that much. He was seen in a rivalry with Evil. He lost in the first round of the New Japan Cup to eventual finalist Shingo Takagi. He didn't really do much at Sakura Genesis 2021. But then afterwards, he got COVID, and it was revealed that he was actually working with a broken back at the time. In June of 2021, he will lose the IWGP World title match to Shingo Takagi before setting his sights to a match with Jeff Cobb. 2 matches with Jeff Cobb. In July of 2021, he would beat Jeff Cobb before losing to Cobb in September of 2021. And in G1 Climax, Kazuchika Okada had an 8-1 record, winning the tournament, beating Kota Ibushi in the finals. And this was due to referee stoppage after Kota Ibushi had separated his shoulder during the match. After this, Okada would defend his right to challenge against Tama Tonga at Power Struggle 2021 and win the world title from Shingo Takagi at Tokyo Dome in 2022. And at Hyper Battle 2022, he would defeat Zack Sabre Jr. for the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship in the main event. 5 years later, in the venue where the greatest match of all time happened, Kazuchika Okada and Katsuyori Shibata both made eye contact in a non-hostile way for the second time. And there it just feels like everything came full circle. Everything. One of the greatest matches of all time. One of the greatest triumphs. That doesn't even have to do with just wrestling. Just one of the greatest triumphs of all time that makes you feel just proud to be a fan of Shibata. They went out there and had the greatest match of all time. And it's hard to put in words of how great it was, because they showcase what wrestling is about.